So today, let's get started. So welcome back to A to Z with Janome. And today's Instagram Live is brought to you by the letter E for our zipper foot. Now, again, one thing I love about Janome machines, regardless of what it is, the feet are all the same letter and known as the same thing. They may look a little different, but they're all the same letter. So, for example, E is our regular zipper foot. Now, I'm sewing on the Continental M7 here today. So for any of our 9mm machines, like the Continental M7, the Memorycraft 15000, the Skyline S9, the 6700, the 8200, 8900, all of those 9mm machines, the E foot looks like this. There's a little hole in the center, and then there's a groove to the right or to the left, so you can get your needle right up against the tape of the zipper, or the coil of the zipper. So that's for 9mm. Now this one would work for 7mm machines, and depending on if you're doing the right or the left side, those grooves, your foot holder would clip on over that bar. So if I were sewing the right side of my zipper, I would position my foot holder right over that bar, clip it into place, and then my needle would be sewing in that right groove. And then when I'm ready to do the left side, I just unsnap my foot, clip it in on the left side, and then my needle would go on that little groove to the left. So that's the E foot for 7mm. Now this is the foot and foot holder from my 5mm 28-year-old Janome, my very first Janome. That's what started me down the Janome path. So this is a 5mm zipper foot. There's a little groove on the underside here where, again, the zipper coil would go, so the foot could go right up against that and the needle. And when I need to sew the other side of the zipper, I just turn my zipper around and sew down the other side. So that's for 5mm. Now, depending if your machine is AcuFeed Flex compatible, and I always describe AcuFeed Flex as a walking foot on steroids. Then here you see it works in tandem with the lower feed dogs. So here's a set of upper feed dogs to feed your fabric beautifully. So this is the single or narrow AcuFeed Flex foot holder with the standard VD foot that comes on it. But if your machine is, again, AcuFeed Flex compatible, like the 6700 and 9400, 9450, I think those machines came with this narrow foot holder. Some of them do, like my 15000, for example, came with this. But for the Continental M7, for example, this would be an additional purchase. But I can get the ED foot, is the zipper foot for the AcuFeed Flex foot. And although it's a little fiddly, this is cool. It's like different soles, or I say different shoes for your feet. So then it just clips in to the side there. So that's the magic of AcuFeed Flex. You can take off the sole plates or the shoes and then snap on another one. So this AcuFeed Flex zipper foot is very good for when I put in the zipper of this gorgeous, beautiful, buttery, soft gray knit. Let me get it around here. The coil of the zipper tape, is very tightly woven. So yeah, and this was just a plastic zipper coil, but the zipper tape is very tightly woven. So I wanted to use my AcuFeed Flex zipper foot, narrow zipper foot, when I put this zipper in, so that means my knit didn't stretch at all. So I lay it out, and there's no puckers, there's no gather, it's not drawing up in the middle. If you've ever wondered, and if you've seen people walking around with like hoodies and such, and you see it all gathered up, it's because the tightly woven zipper tape has stabilized, but then the knit has stretched and it's drawn up. So by using the AcuFeed Flex zipper foot, that prevents that from happening. So again, check with your Janome dealer to see if that foot is compatible with your machine, and if it did not come with your machine, then you can always order it separately. So today I'm just going to set these all off to the side, and I'm going to use my regular E foot for the 9mm machine. So I'm just going to snap that onto place. And, ooh, let me get out of there. So the nice thing about by putting in zippers, now we can do many things. So here's my little zipper sample for the zipper foot, the E foot. I can use whatever size zippers I like. In fact, I often buy longer zippers and then I can cut them shorter if need be. So on this one, I made sized a little shorter by putting that bar tack over. Make sure you open your zipper before you start cutting it off, that's for sure. But here you see on this sample, my fabric is butted up right against that zipper coil because it's just thin cotton. It's this beautiful Tamaracate fabric that I'm using. So the fabric is butted right up against the zipper coil. But if I've got some thicker, heavier fabric, this pouch that I made has got batting in between layers, so it's a little thicker. So I opted to sew my zipper tape or my pouch a little further away from my zipper tape there. So I don't have to worry about my zipper getting caught up in that fabric. Or let's say, especially you'll do that when you've got this beautiful, some of the zipper tapes now are really cool and really decorative. Look at that gorgeous gold zipper. Who wouldn't love that? So if I'm going to use this zipper, for example, I want to show off that zipper tape. So I'm going to sew with my fabric a little away from that coil so I can see the zipper tape. And typically when I sew my zippers, I just run them right off to the end as they then fold in. I like to size the zipper about maybe 1/2 of an inch smaller than the dimensions of the pouch, and that way they don't get caught in the seam allowance, which I'll show you in just a minute. But now some people prefer, instead of the zippers just kind of ending like that, they prefer to add these cute little tabs of either coordinating fabric, contrasting fabric, and it just kind of finishes it off a little differently. Now here I've included my zipper stop, but the advantage of using these tabs, fabric tabs, is when you size your zipper and you can cut off that zipper stop and then use this tab to stop your zipper. So it's just another technique. Now, you know, there's loads of techniques out there. Your instruction manual is a good place to start with how to sew the variety of types of zippers, a lap zipper or a concealed zipper, like an invisible zipper. So your manual will cover a lot of those basics. But as far as the techniques of using these little tabs and such, you go on to the Blue Calla website. So that's Blue, and then Calla is C-A-L-L-A. Now, Blue Calla is one of our Janome artisans. Her name is Celine. I won't even dare to pronounce her last name. She is French, and I'm no good with French. Now, she's not Celine Ross, our French educator from Montreal. This is another Celine. She is based in Toronto at Blue Calla Designs, and she designs handbags, tote bags, everything. And she's got some free patterns and video tutorials, and she's one of our Janome Canada artisans. So she is a great resource, and she goes through with this wristlet, clematis wristlet pattern on how to size your zipper, how to cut it off, how to add these little tabs and such. So she is a great resource. As well, you can go to YouTube and type in Janome America and use the search button there to find videos on zippers. You can go to our Janome Life blog, type in your browser janomelife.wordpress.com, and again use the little search box off to the right to type in zippers, and you'll find a whole slew of information there. And if you go to the Janome Life YouTube channel, there are their Instagram lives. I've done some Instagram lives with Janome Canada, and they have more at the Janome Canada YouTube channel. And there's a whole series that they did, the various educators did, how to install different types of zippers. So again, lots of information you can find online as well, how to do this. But very quickly, I will show then how to, when I want to size a zipper, make it shorter. I've already finished one end here, but these little fabric tabs, I start off with about 1.5 inches square, and then I make a crease mark in the center, and then I fold it in thirds. So then they're nicely finished on each side. So there's my square, fold it in half to make a crease, and then I fold each end in to meet that crease in the center. So it's nicely finished. Now on my machine, I'm just in a regular utility stitch, just a straight stitch, and then you'll see my needle is hovering right above that center hole in my zipper foot. And I've already gone ahead and I've stitched over my zipper coil. It's just a nylon zipper coil, so I can stitch over it with no problem. If I were using a metal zipper, for example, I would definitely want to walk my foot, my needle forward, turning the flywheel very slowly. And you can do that with your zipper coil, nylon zipper coil too, but generally over that, it's not a problem to stitch over just a little bit to keep those teeth together. I've already marked that I want my zipper coil, I want my zipper to finish, again, about 1/2 inch. If I'm using 1/4 inch side seams here, I want my zipper to finish about 1/2 inch smaller than that, because I don't want my zipper to be included in the side seam. So after I am done, whoops, sorry for my reach. After I am done making that little bar tack across my zipper coil, now this is when you really want to make sure that you have your zipper tab pulled down, so you're not going to actually cut it off by mistake. We've all made that mistake a couple of times. So this is why I suggest make sure you open your zipper a little bit and then stitch across with that bar tack, and then I can safely go across here. And don't use your best fabric scissors for this, cutting across that nylon coil, because it will dull it a little bit. So just use a pair of like paper scissors or something like that. These you could save for another project, add it to a little tab of your bag, you know, whichever. I save everything. So of my little tab here, I'm just going to butt up those raw edges and fold that under there. And then again, you see that it covers my bar tacking there. So I can go over, put this under my foot. Now I can move my needle from that center position, and I'm going to move it over to the left. So this is going to be almost like a 1/8 inch edge stitching away from the edge, however far you want it to be. And then I'm just going to stitch across there. And again, go a little slower over that nylon coil, but it's really no problem to stitch right over it. So after that is done, so there, that looks very beautiful. And now my zipper for sure is going to stay in. And then now I can go back and trim those edges off, so it's all nice and neat. And then now I can go lay this down on my fabric, open up the zipper a little bit, and then I can lay this down on my fabric, and then I can sew across on each side of the zipper tape. And then again, it's not going to be caught in the side seams. So for the interest of time, I'm not going to sew that seam, but I can go up here to my sewing applications. Maybe I will sew it. Why not? I'll go up to my sewing applications here. Now, again, a number of our machines have sewing applications, and it's basically the machine asking you, what do you want to do? So I say, oh, I want to put in this zipper. So I'm going to scroll through. And in our previous sewing applications on other machines, like the 15,000, for example, has this lapped zipper and concealed zipper, which is the invisible zipper sewing applications. But new to the Continental M7 sewing applications is this pouch zipper. And again, everybody has been making bags, so that's why they've added this new category for this pouch zipper, where the zipper tape it's not being covered at all. It's on either side of your bag. So now I can go through my sewing applications and select, well, which side of the zipper am I going to sew on, the right side or the left side? And then it's even got the top stitching selections for me. So I'm going to sew this to the right side of my zipper. Now they show it in the sewing applications that the zipper is on top, so it would be like that. The zipper tape would be facing you, but I actually like to have my zipper coil facing up and then my fabric on top of that. And again, I've got this marked, so I would be about a 1/4 inch away, and I'm going to start in a 1/4 inch. Now, the cool thing about this sewing applications is it's already got the lock stitch built into this stitch, so it's going to go back and forth, the back stitch built in. So it's going to stitch and then it's going to back stitch for me. Now, as I get close to that zipper tab, I'm going to stop with my needle in, raise my foot, and reach in to pull that zipper tab past my foot. Now, if it's at all a little fiddly in here, sometimes turning the zipper off to the side like that helps, that I can get in a little more freely. I don't know if you can see that, my hands are in the way. Or you do this little trick, you take a big paper clip, or this is just like a twist tie I've put through the tab of the zipper. So if I'm struggling here, getting that zipper tab past my foot, I can put the big paper clip or this twist tie, and then that'll help me pull the zipper then closed and past that foot. So once I get it past, then I just drop my foot and away I go. And again, I'm going to stop about 1/4 of an inch so I can use my lock stitch or my reverse button, and it'll just lock it into place, or again, reverse, whichever I choose, and away I go. So then I would do the left side exactly the same, and then I could take this to the iron and press it, although usually I just finger press it as well. And then again, you decide, do you really want that zipper tape to show a little bit, so your fabric is going to be a little away from that zipper tape, or depending on how I can press my fabric, a little closer to that if I wanted to. But generally, I like leaving a little bit of daylight in there, especially with thicker fabric. So once I do that, then I'll switch to this sample here, and then I'm ready to go down my other line of top stitching. So again, I can change, depending on if I'm doing the left side or right side, change the sewing applications. Now, if you don't have a machine that has sewing applications, you can always see, can you move your needle a little further over? In this case, move it over to the right so I get a little closer as I stitch down the left side of this. So then I will go, again, I want to start my top stitching a little bit, again, about 1/4 of an inch or so from that edge, because I don't want to catch any more of that zipper tape. I want to leave that free so then it's not caught in my seam allowance. And on this sample, I did my top stitching a little further away as well. So again, this is thicker. I've got batting in here. So the top stitching doesn't have to go all the way to the edge of the zipper as well. You can back it off a little bit so it makes it a little easier to turn, a little less bulky. So I would go down this side, and this is where I could use that lock button, or again, back stitch if it's not really going to show. And then you decide with your top stitching, do you want it to be a little further away? This I'm actually going to get a little closer. And then just run that down. Now this, I don't really need to worry about the zipper tab because it's far enough away. But again, if I needed to stop with my needle down, raise my foot, and then I can pull this, pull that out of the way very easily. So when done all of our top stitching, it looks beautiful. I want to make sure I open this zipper. This is, again, I'm not using those little tabs to keep my zipper closed, so I want to make sure I open my zipper pull. And then here I can fold my zipper tape out of the way and then meet those two folds, and you see that these are not going to get caught in the seam allowance at all. I'm going to fold back the seam allowance. Maybe it'll be easier if I put this down on the bed of the machine. So then you can see I'm going to stitch right up until where the stitching of my zipper ends, right at that seam allowance point. I'm not going to stitch all the way to the end. I'm not going to trap those seam allowances at all. And that'll help reduce some of the bulk. Now I can also air a little bit less than that. I don't have to go right up to that line of stitching, I can back off a little bit. I'm gonna back stitch and trim. And then I can trim these off so they're not gonna get in the way. And then even these corners here, I can trim off at an angle like that. And then trim that guy off at an angle there. And again, this is why you don't want to use your good fabric scissors when you're cutting through that nylon coil. So then that way, when I take the time to fold this all out, I want to make sure that's all in there. Then these, whoops, oh, I trimmed that a little too close. These will fold out and then they will stay tucked in. I trimmed my zipper tape a little too close because I was rushing, but it will look like that, ultimately, is what you want. So then the edges of that zipper are going to be completely caught in that seam. Now, another thing you can do with your zipper foot is piping. Now, we do have, Janome has a piping foot, but when you're using really big piping like this, there's no way I can use that piping foot. So I need to use my zipper foot in order to make this big piping. So I've got my big strip here. It's about, maybe about 3/8 of an inch or so. Your strip to cover your cording is about 4 times the size of your cord. So I've cut my strip, for example, 2.5 inches. So I've got a little bit of wiggle room. So when I'm going to make my piping, I'm going to go back to my utility straight stitch. And then I'm going to tuck in my strip. I've got it about the 1/2 of an inch seam allowance. And I'm going to move my needle over to the left because I want to get up close to that piping and initially or to that cording, and then I want to just start stitching to keep my seam allowances together. And I want to get up to that cording just to hold these layers together. So like that. And then when I go to add my pieces of fabric on either side, like that and like that, to encase it in my seam, I'm going to bring it back to my seam allowance, whatever your seam allowance happens to be. I'm using 1/2 of an inch, so I'm bringing it back to that location. And then I'm going to move my needle over a little bit more to the left because I want it to be a little tighter, because I don't want to see any of that previous line of stitching. So I can even push my cording up against that foot so it stays nice and taut. And again, I'm trying to keep my seam allowances all up in line to that 1/2 of an inch that I was using. And then there, look how beautiful that looks. So you could use this for cushions or even in garments. If you wanted to finish off a hem this way or hem of a jacket, you can do that. And I don't know if you'll be able to see, if I really pull this seam allowance back, then you can see my previous line of stitching here. And then that's where it's great to be able to move your needle over that much more to the left. And then that way you're not going to see that previous line as in here. So it's a really cool thing to use. And again, with your zipper foot, and again, any of our machines can do this. So any questions? I know that was a little rushed. I'm sorry. But again, if you tuned in late and you missed some of this live, you can go back to review it in the IGTV, and then later this will be posted as a video on the Janome HQ YouTube channel. And be sure to join me on Janome Sewing Machines. That's Janome America's Facebook page at 3 o'clock in about half an hour, as I'll be doing live talking about AcuFeed quilting, our amazing Janome invention of turning your embroidery machine into a long arm quilting machine. So I will see you for that. So enjoy, and then I will see you back here at Janome HQ 2 o'clock on Friday for F. Thank you so much. Bye.